Here's the reality, Ben, and you and I know this. Not everyone likes to answer cold calls.
In this week's episode, I'm joined by Daniel Disney. Daniel is a phenomenal speaker, writer, and leader in the space of social selling, turning your LinkedIn presence into a revenue generating platform. In this episode of the Recruiting Better podcast, Daniel shares fantastic advice all around social selling, including
When you work in sales, recruitment, whatever it may be, when you're going to go and physically meet a prospect or a customer, you are going to make yourself as smart and presentable and professional as possible. Very rarely do people make that same mindset to their LinkedIn profile.
Daniel is a master of making your outreach count. He shares thoughts like,
Can you make your messages valuable? That core principle has never changed and probably never will. All that changes is the environment of which we apply it. I would tend to prefer quality over quantity and have real conversations with the right people that, are more likely to convert.
listen in to supercharge your social sales and the way that you use LinkedIn. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Recruiting Better with me, Ben Browning. This time I'm joined by Daniel Disney, who is the king of LinkedIn, a 3 times best-selling author with books on social selling. Daniel is a keynote speaker, advisor, and trainer who will help you get more out of LinkedIn in terms of revenue, leads, and sales. So Daniel, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, Ben, thank you so much for having me and a very kind introduction. Thank you very much, sir.
So Daniel, I've been following your work for a long time, and sort of probably know you best from the daily sales. Particularly when you first came through with that, the memes that I think possibly the recruiter life have maybe looked to ape your style with the daily sales. But since then, you've had 3 books that have come out, really kind of bringing education and training to people on how to make more revenue and sales from LinkedIn. And social selling, the environment of sales in general, has really changed. So in today's conversation, what I'd love to do with you is pull apart what people can be doing to make social selling work for them today, why it's so important to get that social sales element right in the current climate. And we'll also get tactical in terms of how to send messaging that doesn't look spammy or come across as too aggressive in terms of pitching, and also how to soup up and deliver a really effective LinkedIn profile. Because I know those in particular are elements that lots of your clients, lots of people you've worked with in the past take real value from. So I wonder if I can kick off with maybe a really simple question. Why is social selling and really kind of having an effective social selling strategy so important right now?
Simple answer, Ben. It's because for most of the people listening or watching this, it's because your customers are using social. And if your customers are using social as a salesperson, recruiter, whatever your role might be, you need to be going where your customers are. And when I started using LinkedIn and social selling 10, 12 years ago, those were early days, and maybe 30-40% of my customers might have been using it. Now in 2023/2024, most industries are very heavily populated on LinkedIn. And so as businesses, as entrepreneurs, salespeople, recruiters, there's this amazing platform full of our customers. It's up for us to now use it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes so much sense. And look, I'm talking to business leaders all the time who say, one of their biggest challenges at the moment is landing their message, because we're seeing email and cold calls and phone-based outreach not dying, but certainly needing a more kind of rounded strategy in terms of outreach. And I guess with all the work that you've done and the things that you've written and the stuff that you share, social is a really key pillar of a multi-channel approach. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. Omnichannel is kind of the current phrase that a lot of companies use, and it's the ability to be involved in multiple channels. So you're calling people, because here's the reality, Ben, and you and I know this, not everyone likes to answer cold calls. So if you're making cold calls, you might make 100 calls. Maybe you're having a good day and you speak to 10, 15, 20 people. That's still over 80 people that you're not speaking to, because they probably aren't going to answer your call ever. So then when you use things like email, okay, you'll get through to some more, and then maybe you try texting, and social's now become one of those other channels where those that might not answer calls might be active on LinkedIn. They might be scrolling through content. Maybe they're a lot more responsive via messaging. So if you can do as many of those channels as possible, you're going to maximize the amount of prospects and customers you're able to reach, instead of just focusing on one or two. As many of those channels as possible. And as the years go on, more and more channels are going to come. So as companies, businesses, salespeople, recruiters, we have to get very good at adapting. So whilst LinkedIn is still quite new to a lot of people, it won't be long before there'll be a whole new channel to learn as well.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And I think while we're here, I'd love to touch on a question around how you've seen LinkedIn change and how you've seen sellers change the way that they either think about or really use LinkedIn in terms of where we are in terms of the current state. So could you answer to that point, like how LinkedIn has changed as you've been using it, and as a sales tool in particular, what people should be thinking about right now?
It's changed phenomenally. And I mean, going back to when I started using it, LinkedIn was a very different place. It barely had half of the features it does now. It was a lot quieter in terms of content. LinkedIn right now, it's noisy. Lots of people are using it. You can send different types of messages. So when I started, you could only send written messages. Now we have audio, we have video, we have in-mails, content's evolved. We have video, we have polls, we have newsletters. There's so many new ways you can utilize LinkedIn. And I think the biggest key through all of that, and funnily enough, it's a key that hasn't changed from the day I started using it to today. It's about what you put in, and it's about going the extra mile, and it all focuses around the value you give to your network, to the person you're trying to reach, whether that's in your profile. Can you make your profile valuable to your target customer? In your content, can you make your content valuable? In your messages, can you make your messages valuable? That core principle has never changed and probably never will. All that changes is the environment of which we apply it. So LinkedIn as a platform has evolved massively and continues to do so. They drop new features every single year. As long as a salesperson, recruiter, business person, leader, as long as you go out there using those tools to give value, that's where success comes from.
Yeah, indeed. I hear what you're saying about those feature drops, and I'm still praying for the day that they'll actually deal with the user experience on the inbox. Right? It's unbelievable for a tool that so many of us use so much that that functionality isn't there. And as I understand it, it's not even better with page functionality, because the Sales Navigator and LinkedIn profile inboxes seem to operate in different universes as well, right? So
it seems bizarre that that's even an issue, especially since LinkedIn was acquired by Microsoft. You'd think they'd be able to put a lot more resources into making messaging better, and maybe in the coming years we'll see it, refreshed. But it is a bit weird. It's not been a priority for them. But fingers crossed.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, and I guess it brings us quite nicely to that piece around messaging, because one of the things that recruiters will spend a lot of their days doing is reaching out both to clients and to candidates in terms of generating opportunities, generating leads, generating conversations. And one of the things that I'm seeing or hearing more and more from the consultants that I talk to is, LinkedIn is just... everything is just getting seen as spam. They're not getting responses in the way that they used to. It's very difficult to not only stand out from the crowd, like in terms of your competitors, but actually stand out from just the sheer volume of spam messages that so many candidates and clients are getting. So I don't know whether you've seen that as a kind of a changing theme in the recent months, but I guess what I'd really like to ask you is what advice you have for people who feel like they're getting drowned out by spam right now.
So it's an interesting point, and funnily enough, what I've been seeing is the complete opposite. I find it easier to stand out, easier to get replies, but it comes down to how you use it. And what I would recommend to everyone who is feeling like that is pause. Take a step back for a minute and just assess your messaging strategy. What, unfortunately, a lot of people do, and what I have seen an increase in is spammy messaging. And even the people that think they're personalizing it, but aren't really because they're just putting a name and a job title in, even to that level, that's just not enough. And what is needed for messaging now to be successful is, I call it hyper personalization. And kind of what we were just talking about, it's giving as much value as you can. My biggest phrase, and I'm going to get this on a t-shirt at some point for messaging, is the more you make your message about your prospect, the more likely you'll be to get a reply. And it's all about digging in deeper. Now, the extra little cherry on top to all of this is most people are still only sending written messages. I would say most months, my inbox only gets written messages. And this is why audio voice notes and video messages are massively increasing response rates, because no one's sending them or getting them. So when we talk about assessing your LinkedIn messaging strategy, look at what you're sending, look at how you're sending it and when you're sending it. A lot of people, I think, would have a lot of opportunities to make some changes there that would have a very positive impact.
I hear you. I want to go a little bit more granular than that. And I think maybe it makes sense for us to look at individually text-based messages and then think about kind of what I consider to be multimedia messages, right? Voice notes and video. You might tell me that you've got very different strategies for voice notes and video, so we can explore that. But starting out with a text-based message, if that was the only functionality available to us today, what can someone do to create a message that gives value and create something that there's kind of buyer-centric and oriented around the person that you're sending that message to? How do you go about doing that in an effective way right now?
Do you know what? I'll give you two examples, Ben. Let's get really deep on this one. So example one, let's imagine we're messaging a really senior person in a business, maybe a finance director, a business owner, someone right at that sort of top level. My messaging strategy would be very much to the point, not a sales pitch, but I would focus on an ROI I've achieved for someone similar. So I would sort of type the message, hey, Ben, here is a company we worked with just like yours. Here's what they spent. Here's what we were able to achieve for them. Real numbers, real example based, as short and sweet as possible. I'd love to see if we might be able to do the same for you. Kind regards, Dan. For someone very senior, you're getting to the point. The message is focused on them and what they are going to achieve. And if you can, find the best possible example to use in that message, you've got a much higher chance of getting a response from a senior person who is not looking to do the salesy dance, but is looking to see what they can get out of the situation. The other example I'll give is to maybe people slightly lower down the hierarchy, maybe managers, team leaders, under that director level, where what I'm going to do is research. So I'm going to look at their LinkedIn profile. I'm going to look at their LinkedIn activity, their LinkedIn company pages activity, and I'm going to try and find some nugget of information I can use in that message and try and dig deep into it. The ideal scenario, and this isn't, going to count for everyone, but if they've shared something on LinkedIn, reference the content. Hey, Ben, loved that post you shared yesterday. Dig a bit deeper into the post, make a few points. Just looking at your profile, and I noticed this is what you do. So you make it all about them, you're complimenting, then you do some more personalized research around the product or service that you sell, and then your message can evolve that way. Those sort of two styles in a written-based message, massively different to what I would say most people are sending, certainly what most messages I get in my inbox, which tend to be, hi, Ben, my name's Dan. I work for this company. We sell X, Y, and Z. Are you free tomorrow to talk about it? Which just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. Winning high quality new business is more difficult than ever. And as you know, we are strong advocates of using email in your BD outreach. But we also know that using email outreach campaigns is more and more difficult. Google and Yahoo have upped the bar in terms of what they consider to be spam, and so working to create great results from email campaigns is more and more difficult. And if you're sending
messages at volume from your primary domain, you really need to be worried about domain health. Not to mention the fact that only the most hyper-relevant, hyper-tailored content is going to get the kinds of responses you want from your clients. Our partner Outstation does all of the heavy lifting for you. It's an amazing tool that runs end-to-end services from data collection through segmentation, through using AI to really target and get specific about who you're sending messages to. Is a real game changer in terms of the way that we use both a combination of technology and that human touch. Outstation goes a level beyond anything that we've ever seen before. And we've got clients all over the world in different sectors across recruitment who are getting fantastic results just from using the tools at Outstation. If you want to check it out, head to the show notes. There's a link there for you. And if you go through to their page, they will give you 15% off a discount from your first order. So go check out Outstation, change your results from your email campaigns, and it'll help you win more business.
Some really useful tactical frameworks there around both that senior stakeholder and that lower level stakeholder. And I love the fact, particularly in the senior stakeholder, I love the difference between the two and the different kind of thinking that shows, particularly with that senior level stakeholder where we're going into numbers. One of the points that I noticed you was reading between the lines a little bit there was the brevity of that message. We're talking about, from the sounds of it, quite short messages compared to what most people send. Is there kind of a typical length that you aim for?
Thing to remember is this is an instant message. And the reason I really focus on this, and actually I use this in a lot of my sessions that I do, there's a slide I've got, and it was the longest message I've ever received that I've had to cut into 3 sections to fit on a screen slide. It was that long. Now, its length told me that someone had copied and pasted an email template, popped it into LinkedIn and sent it. What was worse was the opening sentence said, "Hi Daniel, I hope this email finds you well." So they hadn't even been bothered to change the opening sentence to, "I hope this LinkedIn message finds you well." Anyway, way too long. LinkedIn messages are instant messages, no different to a text, a WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook message, short and sweet, maximum, 1 to 2 sort of mid-sized paragraphs at that. You just want to keep it conversational. If you want to give more information, then your goal should be to get an email address or arrange a phone call where you can go in deeper. But in this instant message, it's a chat. So be limited to what you say. This is why spammy messages don't work, because you just don't have the space to put enough information as you might do with an email, where it might work sometimes a bit more.
Yeah, I hear you. And look, on that, we had Will Allred from Lavender on the podcast at the beginning of the year, sharing information from those guys, the data that they've got around the length of emails, and it's amazing how much that's shifted, even in the last even in the last 12 months, even 6 months. They're looking at messages of kind of 50 to 70 words as being the ones that get the highest level of replies, which takes a totally different mindset. And I think the mindset you point to there, Dan, around thinking about it as a text or a WhatsApp message, is a much better mindset to start with.
It's all about the person you're sending it to, Ben. That's what you're going to keep focusing on. It's about them. It's not about you. Give them as many reasons as possible to want to reply to you. The only way you'll do that is if you show them how you think you can help them. They don't care what you're selling. They care what it can do for them. So make it about them, and it makes all the difference. And you don't need tons of words to do that. You can do that in a nice little short space of text.
Yeah, indeed. And look, when you mention that kind of message to a more junior stakeholder in the organization, or somebody that's perhaps got less responsibility than that senior level role, it also felt to me as though the emphasis there is on the conversation, is on the back and forth, is on starting with a conversation that talks to that individual, that gets them to reply, and then teasing out the conversation there. And the big word that came to mind as you were sharing that with me was patience. This kind of, I wonder what you say to people who feel like, I need to convey as many reasons or as much information as possible in my first message, so that they feel that they have to reply. I wonder if that's something that comes up in your training sessions or questions from people you work with.
It does. I call it autopilot, and I will always use the great example of the sell me this pen. And when you go to most people, even salespeople, and you say, sell me this pen, just like with messaging, all they do is just think, oh, I need to sell the pen. I need to, tell all these amazing features about it. And it's so counterintuitive to what actually works. And I call it autopilot, whether it's messaging or selling a pen, switch autopilot off. It's like a networking event. You don't go to a networking event, walk up to each person and just start pitching them. You talk to them. Hey, Ben, how are you doing? What is it you do? How long have you, been working there? What are some of the things you're working on at the moment? You have a conversation. Those conversations with patients evolve into opportunities when the time is right. And as a salesperson, and recruiters, we carry this sort of weight of pressure, targets. And when we can offload that and go out there and take that pressure of selling away and just go out to help people, it's a very different approach that allows us a bit more freedom and the patience to be able to dig a bit deeper, which quantity versus quality is going to win in this scenario.
Indeed, as you mentioned those points there around kind of the value creation piece. Reminded, of course, of the classic quote from Zig Ziglar: "You can have anything you want in the world as long as you're prepared to help other people get what they want." And the great book, "The Go Giver" by Bob Berg, I believe. The production team will fact check me on that one. So they're good resources for recruiters to check out in terms of really understanding what it means to create value for others and how to do that. Okay, so we've got some really useful templates there then, and ideas and ways for thinking about heuristics for thinking about how to model LinkedIn messaging from a text-based perspective. Does that change if you're doing something with voice notes or videos? Was it a similar kind of strategy? Any differences that might apply to those?
So the strategy stays the same. It's just the delivery. So if you're sending an audio voice note, the scenarios stay the same. It's all about the message being about them. Your delivery then has to be acknowledged, which is, if you're going to record a voice note, be aware of your tone, your posture, smiling, all those little things that make your voice sound positive. Don't just look down and read off of a script and say, hi, my name is Dan and I'm calling from, still be personable, smile, laugh, all those things are very, very powerful. And then with a video, look at the camera, smile, eye contact, body language. It's just different depths to the messaging that allow you to ultimately give more in that message, because you don't just have words in a text-based message. With audio, you add tone and voice. Then with video, you evolve that into body language, eye contact. So these allow us to do a lot more. So not only are they disruptive because not many people are using them, but there's more depth to them than just a standard written message, which allows us to give a lot more.
Yeah, I hear that, and it's interesting. As you were asking, sort of mentioning those points, I was thinking about multimedia messaging, so video and voice as part of a omni-channel strategy. One of the things that I always say to the guys that I work with is that actually, as part of an outreach strategy, one of the great values that being able to send voice notes and video gives you is it adds a real level of intimacy and personality to those messages. So someone can be sat there receiving your emails for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks and think, oh, I'm not, it sounds a bit robot, like sounds interesting, but I'm not really making that connection. And then all of a sudden you pop up on their LinkedIn, in their LinkedIn inbox, and they can see your face and they can see you're a real person, which in these days is actually like a really significant step that people realize, A, you're real, you're a human, and B, you have a personality. I think those elements potentially more than ever have real value. Do you have data around the kind of the difference that using social selling as part of a multi-channel outreach strategy kind of can produce for people?
Yeah, there's a ton of data, but I just want to take a very quick step back, just because with audio and video messages, we can, it's very easy to see how powerful they are. But I can guarantee a lot of people listening to this and watching this are hesitant to do it because fear is holding them back. And I can fully appreciate sending voice notes and video messages. Video messages, especially, is very scary up front. So I just wanted to acknowledge it and first of all, just say that's fine. When I first started recording videos, I hated it. I used to go into my car, lock the door so no one could hear me or see me, and I'd sit there holding my phone. And honestly, it was the weirdest, most uncomfortable thing. But as with anything, practice makes perfect. The first cold calls you make are horrible, but you get better at it. You get more confident. So what I would just like to, recommend to anyone who is watching and listening to this, if you are scared, just give it a try. You don't even have to send it to anyone. Just record a voice message, just record a video on your phone. Just start getting comfortable with the process because trust me, massively powerful forms of messaging, but overcoming fear will be holding a lot of people back from doing it, and they'll just not do it and keep not doing it and keep not doing it. And before long, all of their competitors will be doing it and you'll miss an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's a great point. And the other thing that kind of comes from what you say there is how empowering it is to know that all we're looking to do is start a conversation, right? We're not looking to convince, we're not looking to persuade. I think some of what holds people back is this feeling of like, how can they almost feel like they're recording some kind of advert or commercial. And most salespeople, while we might have a strong ability to play a role and act at certain times, we're not trained actors. And so this idea of creating a 60-second commercial in the truest form is out of most people's comfort zone. But actually, that's not the point, right? It's just speaking to the camera. Hey, Dan, it's Ben. I noticed this about your profile. Is that something that's important to you right now? Is just a really good way to kick that conversation off. And
let me give you,
and it can be as conversational as that.
And that's really good. I want to give a great example of just how easy that whole thing can be. I was last year, I was speaking at a conference in Croatia, and I was in my hotel room about an hour before I was due to speak. And I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, and a prospect that I'd worked with a few years back had just announced they'd moved job. So they'd done this big job announcement. They'd recorded it as a video. It came up on my feed announcing this job move. Now I'm there in my hotel room, sort of suited and booted, ready to go on stage. And I just quickly opened up a message. And because they'd shared it as a video, I thought, well, I'm going to send them a video message. Just sent a very quick message, again, from my hotel room. Hey, huge congrats on the new role. Wasn't expecting you to be leaving that company to go to this company, but sounds really exciting. Really, really happy for you. Would be great to catch up soon. Let me know if there's anything I can help with, Dan. That was it. About 5 minutes later, I got a video message back from that person saying, thank you so much. Yeah, really, excited for this new opportunity. I'm actually going to have a bigger team and a bit more budget. So would love to get you in to come and work with us. Can we set up a call? Set up a call literally in the space of minutes from a hotel room, no preparation, just that's the power of sort of audio and video messages. That's how easy they can be. And as to your point, none of that was a sales pitch. I wasn't going out there to sell. I was just networking, talking, having a conversation. So when you strip away all of these preconceptions, switch off autopilot, actually messaging's fun. It's just talking to people. And when you do it right, you create opportunities.
Yeah. Good stuff. That's awesome. I'm a big advocate of video and voice. And I think that, again, as I say, it's kind of a really big part of the overarching sales outreach channels at the moment. But the thing that one of the things that people are increasingly asking me about is they're starting to use social selling techniques, messaging of whatever type it is, but they're finding that they're not always as good at the follow-up as they'd like to be. And I don't know whether there are either strategies or tools that you recommend to people that can really support with that. I know that in particular, LinkedIn is very sensitive about what tools you use, and there are lots of external providers who don't meet or don't comply with the rules that LinkedIn set for fair usage. So I don't know whether there are any strategies, A, that you recommend, or tools, B, that you've seen people get good success with that do meet or do comply with LinkedIn's rules.
No, it's a good point. LinkedIn is very, very cautious about, who they work with. And there are a lot of companies that you can just scrape the data and, LinkedIn doesn't like it because it usually gives a bad impact to their users. So yeah, I would always recommend tread carefully when using third-party platforms. You've got a couple of closer internal options to use. Number one is Sales Navigator. So LinkedIn has its own built-in tool which allows you to build lists of prospects, customers, and create a better cadence of follow-up. But the other one is your CRM, and LinkedIn does integrate with a lot of the major CRMs. So again, you can create and schedule follow-ups. Now, I'm always going to be an advocate of a more manual approach as opposed to an automated approach. I would tend to prefer quality over quantity and have real conversations with the right people that, you know, are more likely to convert. I understand a lot of companies want to push scale and want to push, you know, mass volume, especially through SDRs and, you know, people that are trying to prospect quite heavily, which is okay. But again, as with anything, I would just recommend tread carefully and maybe test out a quality versus quantity approach. But the key for follow-up is just to monitor and manage the people that you're messaging and communicating, keep a track of that conversation history. So track sent a video message on this date and then have a little reminder in a couple of days. If no reply, send a voice message. You know, you can kind of create your own cadences and create a calendar of when you need to be doing those things. The only thing that you probably could use are tools like sales engagement tools that can help with the scheduling, but just try and avoid sending out too many templated or low personalization messages, because it's really hard to show that they're going to be better than having direct conversations.
Yeah, I hear that. And that makes really good sense in terms of coming away from a structured kind of outreach strategy and being a little bit more organic with it, being a little bit more responsible is also kind of like a word that comes to mind with that type of strategy. I think that, as we mentioned before, there is that really big challenge that LinkedIn hasn't made the inbox environment particularly friendly and particularly helpful. So people will say to me, "Oh yeah, you know, if I send a message and then I get one back, but then my inbox is cluttered, it's like how do I navigate that?" But that's all part of the role, right? All part of an effective sales strategy is how you manage it and having the tools in place to do it.
Yeah, you have to be on it a bit with LinkedIn, unfortunately, in terms of keeping on top of messages. And trust me, I still find it hard after using LinkedIn for over 12 years. The inbox will always be the biggest challenge, I think, with all parts of social selling. So again, fingers crossed, LinkedIn will do something about it and create folders and lots of ways to make it a bit more similar to an email inbox. But yeah, until that time comes, you do just have to be a bit more proactive.
It almost feels like Microsoft has made it a natural tax of doing business on LinkedIn. You know, it's like, well, you can have access to this amazing tool, but we're going to make the inbox function really painful to use. So, you know,
they could charge for it. I reckon if they design this amazing inbox and charge for it, I mean, I'd pay for it. So maybe there's a money-making opportunity for them there.
Absolutely. Let's move on from messaging then, and let's think about what happens when someone receives your message, you engage in that conversation. Brilliant. What's the first next likely step that you see most people take when they're starting to engage with a salesperson who's sent them a message?
Depending on the type of message and the type of person, there's a couple of ways to go with this. Number one, I want to talk about increasing reply rates. So sending a message is one thing, getting them to reply, and that message could be amazing. But there is something people can do before all of that to increase the chance of getting a reply, and that's build their personal brand. So when you become more known in your industry, you're posting content consistently, you're commenting, your name's out there, people get to know you. When you send a message, if they know you, there is going to be a better chance they're going to respond to you, especially if your brand is very much giving value and they see you as a credible person. Then you increase the chance dramatically against your competitors to get that response. Now, moving on to if they do reply, to your point earlier, Ben, it's about the conversation. You know, I've got a great screenshot of an amazing thread, and it's I think the salesperson sends a message like, "Hey Ben, how are you doing?" And the person replies, "Yeah, I'm great." And then the person replies, "Great," and then just goes into a full sales pitch. And it just, you know, a conversation doesn't work like that. You do need to have a bit of back and forth. You have to earn the opportunity if you're going to pitch someone. So if you get a reply, great, talk. Don't jump straight into the sales pitch. Don't get overexcited. Keep patient and just have a conversation and try and navigate it in an organic and natural way where you can lean it towards eventually, hopefully, becoming a sales conversation. But it has to be something that you earn. You have to do it a nice way. And again, you can't just jump in the deep end and go to pitch, unless, to our other example, you're messaging someone quite senior, you've just gone straight in with, here's what we did for this other company. Well, then if they're happy and keen to learn, well, then you're there. You don't have to do anything fluffy. There's no, sales dance to do. It's just straight to the point.
Yeah. Okay. So that sounds much more similar to kind of Sandler type approach, where or kind of leading with social proof and those sorts of things.
Standing out in your sector is becoming harder than ever. Lots of people are making noise, saturating the market with the same old droll tones. So if you want to stand out, it's time to start a podcast. Yes, there's loads of podcasts out there, but how many of them are actually in your niche? Do any of them speak to your perspective on the market? I didn't think so. Podcasting not only sets you apart as an innovative thinker in your market, it is great content for repurposing. Here at SearchStat, we help you become the voice of your industry. We can stretch your content and turn it into a content goldmine, leveling up your personal brands and recruitment marketing in the process. Sounds good, doesn't it? Well, to find out more, head over to searchstat.co.uk/podcasts.
The other thing that I was wondering about is how do we get our LinkedIn profile optimized to boost replies? Because I imagine if we send a message to somebody, one of the first actions they're going to take is hopping on our LinkedIn profile and then thinking, right, how do we, is this the kind of person I want to reply to? So what advice have you got there around LinkedIn profiles?
Remembering our core theme that I mentioned at the start of this, Ben, which is make it customer focused, make it valuable to your customer. A lot of profiles, a profile is built like a CV. LinkedIn, amazing place to get a job. And the profile is laid out like a CV. So a lot of people fill it in like a CV. They just talk about themselves, which is good if you're trying to get a job. But if you're trying to sell something, if you're trying to get an employer to work with you as a recruiter, if you're trying to get a candidate to work with you, your profile needs to be a little bit less about you and a little bit more about them. You need to talk about how you work with people like them, what you can help them do or achieve. You need to make them see that you are there to help, not just to sell something. So your profile, through your banner, through your summary section, needs to answer as many of their questions as possible. And yes, have your personality in, talk about yourself a little bit so they get to know you as a person, but the focus really needs to be on them. And if you can transform your profile that way, when people look at it, they're more likely to look at it in a more positive way than instead of just seeing someone who has recruiter at X company or salesperson at Y company, and they just think, well, I know what this person's after.
Yeah. About disarming those initial kind of feelings of reluctance or desire not to engage, isn't it?
There's a mindset piece here as well, Ben, which is a lot of people, when they're using LinkedIn and social media, they sort of look at it as this tool to sell, which we've already kind of established is not the right place to do it. But let's look at it in a different light. When you work in sales, recruitment, whatever it may be, when you're going to go and physically meet a prospect or a customer, you are going to make yourself as smart and presentable and professional as possible. So, for me, that's probably going to be a nice suit, nice shoes, nice watch. I'm going to make sure I look as professional as possible. Very rarely do people make that same mindset to their LinkedIn profile, as an example, because that is their digital presence. And actually, for a lot of our prospects and customers now, their first impression isn't us in person. It is our LinkedIn profile. So thinking about having a professional headshot, thinking about having a professional banner and making it look really presentable, it needs to be that same mindset of how we would make ourselves look physically smart and professional. We want to do the same for our profiles. And that sort of connect the dots of the sort of mindset piece can really help open eyes to see, okay, I understand now what I want this profile to do. It's not just filling in my information. I want to make it look good to my customers.
So it's making a good first digital impression. And it sounds as though the key point there is around having a really professional, at least professional feeling. Even if you can't afford like all the professional assets, or you're an individual consultant working in a bigger business that doesn't do this kind of stuff, is doing everything you can to polish up and really create that excellent first impression in terms of the visual kind of effect.
Well,
In
let's
terms
get
of
tactical, Ben. Oh, sorry, just very quickly, just because, again, you mentioned the cost, and I'm always keen to save people money where I can. You can upgrade your profile significantly without having to spend money at all. Use your phone to take a good headshot. Most of us have really phenomenal cameras on our phones to take a good headshot, shoulders and above, against a plain wall if you can. And then use platforms like Canva, Canva.com, free to use. They have LinkedIn banner templates. You could even upload your photo, take the background out, add a plain color that matches your brand. All of that without spending a penny can massively glow up a LinkedIn profile. So there are things you can do to have a big impact without spending a penny that, again, if those that have some money can get a professional photo and banner created, that's great. But for most people, no excuse.
No excuse. You heard that, guys. Excellent. Cool. And just then thinking about the taking that tactical piece to another level, are there any parts of the profile in particular that you see people misuse, or perhaps there's a real, where do you see the biggest opportunity for profile optimization in terms of content and that kind of tactical advice?
Hands down, the summary section would be the number one place. There is a lot of space. If you take a look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see there's a lot of text in there in a very sort of well-written format. There's spaces and things like that, but there's a lot of space where, again, you can answer your customers' questions. Who do you help? What do you help them achieve? Which similar companies have you helped before, and how have you helped them? How can they get in touch with you? You know, there's a lot of space for you to do that. So without a doubt, your summary section is the biggest piece of landscape that you have on your profile. Then you've got your featured section where you can upload media. So you could upload videos, testimonials, case studies, things like that. So that adds a visual aspect to it. But those sort of two combined areas, your photo and your banner are what people are first going to see. So to even get them to really go down to that summary, you need to have a good photo and banner. So that's obviously your about section has the most space, most value, but those are still impactful. And then the last piece, I call it the cherry on top of a LinkedIn profile, are your recommendations, where you can have your customers telling future customers about how great it is buying from you. No one's going to be more effective at selling whatever it is you're selling than your happy customers. They're the most trustworthy source, and that's baked into your profile. So it's the cherry on top. And anyone who's wanting to use LinkedIn needs to be seeking out new recommendations on a regular basis because they really are valuable.
Yeah. And the single biggest kind of piece of value that you get from reviews and testimonials on LinkedIn, of course, is that your client can then go and click on the profile of the person who wrote that and go and see who they are and what they're about. And if they're a CEO of a business or someone with a really established profile, or someone with a good career history, you can see that person's genuine and kind of real, unlike you can on so many other review platforms, right?
Yeah, no, it brings a total reality to it. And an extra tip to that is you can use them as content. So take a screenshot of a testimonial, share it as a post, talk about the journey. There's so many extra layers of value to give. But to your point, these are real people that people can actually go through. You can't, well, I say this, there probably are ways, but you can't create fake recommendations that ultimately will be some level of transparency. But yeah, it makes it real.
Yeah, indeed. Hey, look, I want to share something directly with recruiters, actually, as Daniel was talking about that about section in particular. All the points we've mentioned today go back to really core fundamentals of sales that we'll talk about on this show time and time again. And Dan is the king of LinkedIn in terms of turning all of those techniques and approaches and mindsets into something that works through this really powerful channel. But they're all fundamentally really strong sales techniques, whichever channel you're using. But so many recruiters, and here's the message directly for recruitment consultants and recruitment business leaders, is so many recruiters out there have not really got their ICP, their target client, exactly who they help, really well dialed in and defined. Very few can really take that down to a very granular level. In addition to that, the problems that you solve, the real challenges that you help people overcome, what are the things that those ICPs, those target clients, those challenges that they're facing, that they're moaning about, what are they and how do they describe them? And if you can get those two things right, ultimately what's known typically outside of recruitment, as product market fit. If you can get those two things right, then creating a LinkedIn profile, sending messaging, making cold calls, sending emails, all of that becomes so much easier. And most recruiters, and Dan might also say that actually a vast majority of salespeople struggle to get that accurately dialed in.
It's kind of the you see a lot of people going out who think they are selling to everyone, and that's a weak assumption to make. Not many people are selling to everyone. We all have ideal customers. We all have certain types of personas that either make better customers, make quicker customers, whatever it may be, and that deeper understanding. And to anyone who's new, that's easy if you've been working in your job for a period of time. But if you're new, okay, you might not know that. Go and find it out. Go and find the more experienced, successful people in your business and ask them, because the information is out there somewhere. But you're absolutely right, Ben. The more you understand your customers, the easier everything, LinkedIn, recruiting, sales becomes.
Yeah. As you're talking about those newer people into the market, and we'll just cover off one more point, if I may. But as we're talking about bringing newer people into the industry and into the market, one of the things that I always recommend, I think, is massively underused. I don't know whether you've come across Richard Smith and the guys at Refract, now part of Allego. Obviously, Refract is a conversational analysis tool. So listen to your calls, tell you who's speaking more, give you feedback on the way you're asking questions and those sorts of things. I recommend that recruiters listen back to their calls all the time. I recommend that they record all of their meetings on Teams or on Zoom or however they're doing them and watch those back and create a documented library. What I've never done is thought about capturing DM conversations from LinkedIn or from those social conversations so that newer recruits can see this is how actually I took this person through a conversation in terms of DM outreach. Is that something that you've seen, Dan? Is that something that you recommend? Is that something that you've seen work well for bringing new people in and kind of training them on social selling?
Oh, it's something I massively recommend. And to the individual person, documenting it yourself, taking screenshots or linking it with your CRM is great. To the leaders, when you're having your one-to-ones, get them to open up their laptop, look through LinkedIn, get them to show you, some of the messages that have been more successful. It's annoying because tools like Refract and Gong and the many that are out there kind of automate to make that process easier. We don't have any tools yet that allow us to sort of extract LinkedIn messages and create some sort of easier sort of resource to look at. So it has to be a bit more manual, but I am all for that. Call listening, email screening, LinkedIn message screening. The best way we can learn is the only way we can coach ourselves and coach our teams and coach new people is to look at what is working and what isn't working, break it down, improve, adapt, etc. So yeah, absolutely. Look at your LinkedIn messages, written, audio, video, and use them to learn.
Awesome. Dan, look, I really, really appreciate everything you've shared today. It's been super tactical, super insightful. I think there's so many, as I say, kind of basic principles of sales that can be reimagined and brought to life when we're using kind of conversations in social selling and talking to people that are much easier to reach on LinkedIn than they might be through any other channel. So I'm really grateful to you for sharing all of this today. I'm going to ask you whether there is one final point, one final tactic, or maybe something we've already discussed actually that you think is the kind of the key takeaway for people today.
Biggest thing I'll add, and I don't think we've really discussed it. I think everyone knows about it, but not many people do it. It's consistency. Being consistent in all things around LinkedIn, through the content, through the messaging, is the biggest challenge. So my biggest tip going off of this podcast is go into your calendar and book 15 to 30 minutes as a recurring meeting every day for the next 6, 9, 12 months for LinkedIn and social selling, and just have that bit of accountability, that reminder in your calendar that, right, I'm going to do something on LinkedIn, because consistency is what holds a lot of people back from being successful. And when you can be more consistent, that's where opportunities arise. So everything we've discussed is great, but if you don't do it consistently, you're going to struggle to see results. So go and book it into your calendar, make it a reminder, and then just have that extra little nudge that, oh, it's time. Let me do some stuff on LinkedIn today.
Perfect. I couldn't echo those sentiments more. As I say, I am incredibly grateful to you for hopping on the show. And now feels like an appropriate time to mention to the audience that both Dan and I both went to the same school in Gosport, but we didn't use it. We didn't use it as a rapport opener. We didn't use it at the start of our conversation. We didn't use it in our initial outreach and connection with each other. You don't have to. So yeah, think about how you engage those messages. Think about how you are creating connectivity. Think about multimedia messages. Are you stuck to using text? Can you get confident and bite the bullet and do voice and video outreach? Can you start conversations? Can you think about if you're reaching out to senior people, sharing social proof, data, numbers, facts, and if you're hitting somewhere in the middle of the organization, just starting with an observational type opener. I think that's most of the key points that Dan shared today, but I'm sure you'll have taken your own key nuggets. So, Dan, really grateful for you to join us on the show.
Ben, thank you for having me.
Just one last thing from me. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, hit like, hit follow, and consider leaving a review. Your feedback is really greatly appreciated. We're still looking to perfect the format and to think about how we can make this show even more valuable for all of our audience. So as you leave feedback, we pick it up and we'll be including it in everything we do going forwards. And if you want to get closer to the show, to ask me questions or hear about upcoming guests and put questions to them, then head to the show notes where you'll find a link to the Recruiting Better community. From there, you'll be able to get our newsletter with regular updates and send me any messages or feedback that you want me to receive.